Have you ever lost weight and then gained it all back? And instead of asking whether the diet was impossible to live with, you simply blamed yourself? You thought you were weak? You thought you had no discipline? You thought you had failed again? I did that for almost 20 years. Every time the weight came back, I decided that I was the problem. But today, after losing 13 kilograms, I can finally see it differently. Maybe I was not the problem. Maybe the problem was that every diet I tried only worked for as long as I was willing to suffer. And suffering is not a lifestyle. Hi, my name is Vera. I live in the Netherlands. In my previous video, I talked about how burnout changed my relationship with food. Today, I want to talk about diets. For almost 20 years, I tried many different ways to lose weight. I went hungry, I ate tiny portions, I followed the so-called Japanese diet, I cut out sugar and bread, I exercised a lot, I spent an entire year on Keto, I counted calories very strictly. And here's the most interesting part. Almost every one of those systems worked. I lost weight. Sometimes 5 kilograms, sometimes 11, but every single time the weight came back. Sometimes with a few additional kilograms. So today I understand the problem wasn't that the diets did not work. The problem was that they only worked for as long as I could endure them. I started university when I was 17. I moved out of my parents' home and into a student dormitory. For the first time, I was completely responsible for what I ate and when I ate it. But I had absolutely no idea how to organize my meal properly. That was also the first time I really started paying attention to my appearance. The reason was completely ordinary. I like boy. And of course, I wanted to look better. I knew nothing about nutrition. I didn't know how much portion the body needed. Fat, carbs, vitamins. I did not think about any of that. I simply created a very basic system for myself. A small bowl of wheat porridge, a small piece of butter and an apple. 3 times a day, the same thing every day, and the weight started coming off. I saw the result and came to a conclusion. Great idea. It works. I was young. I moved around a lot. I spent 6 years at university. I lived a fairly active life. So my weight did not increase dramatically during that time. We weren't talking about 10 kilograms. But that was the moment when an important belief formed inside of me. To lose weight, you simply need to eat as little as possible. It doesn't matter whether it is comfortable. It does not matter whether the food tasted good. It doesn't matter whether you are hungry. The only thing that matters is enduring it. And in my head, I could hear a phrase often attributed to the famous Russian ballerina Maya Plisetskaya. You don't need diets, you just need to eat less. Later, I moved to Moscow. I lived independently and still had no idea how to organize my meal properly. But I was still young and fairly active. Usually we were talking about only a few extra kilograms, no 5 at most. And one day I found a diet online that was called the Japanese diet. Why Japanese, you ask me? I have no idea. I don't think it had anything to do with Japan. It was a strict 30-day plan. Every day was already decided for you. Eggs, boiled chicken breast, cabbage, other very basic foods, no sugar, no salt, and no freedom. But the result came quickly. In about 13 days, I could lose around 5 kilograms. And I didn't return to the diet only once. I probably followed it 4 or 5 times during different periods of my life. Every time it proved the same things to me. If you restrict yourself enough, the number on the scale will go down. Back then, I didn't think about how much of that quick weight loss might have been water. I didn't think about losing muscles. I didn't think about what would happen after day 13. I only saw the result. 5 kilograms gone. For me, it was a real life hack. Suffer for 13 days and then everything will be fine again. But after those 13 days, ordinary life began again. And in ordinary life, I didn't know how to eat. I only knew how to follow a diet or not follow one. Again and again, I was breaking the trust between myself and my body. I was convincing myself that forcing myself worked, but restriction was always followed by compensation, as if my body remembered the pain I had put it through. Of course, I mean that metaphorically. And later I tried to get even more of everything I had denied it. When I started dating my future husband, we began eating at a restaurant quite often. My husband is tall and slim. He can eat much more than I can. Bread, butter, dessert, a large meal. And for a long time I ate almost the same way he did. But our bodies, height, activities level and needs are completely different. One day we were standing with friends in a shopping center. There was some kind of public scales there, and I remember I stepped onto it and saw around 72 or 73 kilograms. I was so shocked. Before that, I had usually weighed around 62 to 64 kilograms, sometimes 68, and now I was over 70. I simply couldn't believe it. But at the same time, I still had completely confidence in one thing. Whenever I wanted to do, I could easily lose the weight because I had done it before. I knew the Japanese diet. I knew how to endure. I had willpower. It felt as if I always had an emergency button. Gained weight, press the button, suffer for a while, and lose the weight, and then continue living exactly as before. In 2017, I worked in Moscow for a FIFA subsidiary involved in preparation for the World Cup 2018. I worked extremely hard, including on weekends. Now I understand that I was already gradually burning out. But I could not see it at that time. When I stopped working and went for the Netherlands for a few months, I experienced burnout for the first time. I felt emotionally drained. I didn't have as much energy as before. I didn't understand what was happening to me. And I started eating more. It was almost if I was trying to get energy from food, because I could not find energy inside of myself. After a few months, I started feeling better. I returned to Moscow. I had a membership at a fitness club and I went for sport. I started eating small portions again. I stopped eating bread. I ate almost no sugar. I exercised a lot. And once again, I lost weight and reached around, in that moment, 68 kilograms. The system seemed to work again. Once again, I received confirmation. You simply need to pull yourself together. Eat less, move more, and control yourself more strictly. Then I moved to the Netherlands. Moving to another country is incredibly stressful. But I decided that I was not going to have an adjustment period. No depression. No longer period of struggling with the move. I would simply keep myself very busy. Good decision. Within a few months, I learned Dutch to the level I needed. I passed my exams. I started doing manicure and pedicure. Gradually, I built my own business. In this moment, I was afraid to stop. Because if I stopped, I would have to feel everything that was happening to me. A new country, a new language, loneliness, starting my life again from zero. So I worked a lot, constantly. My eating became more chaotic. There was plenty of convenient, fried, fatty and sugar food around me. And when you live under constant stress, that kind of food can give you a very quick feeling of pleasure and relief. Around that time, I discovered a Russian blogger who talked about keto. Then I found a popular online health personality known as Dr. Berg. At that time, I treated almost everything he said as medical truth. Later, I learned that he held a doctor of chiropractic degree. In other words, he was not a medical doctor, not a physician in the way I had understood the titles. But honestly, who started investigating those differences when the word doctor is part of someone's name? His brand promoted the health keto approach and sold supplements. And during that period, I watched his videos endlessly. Insulin, ketosis, intermittent fasting, fat as a fuel, autophagy. It felt as if I had finally understood how the body worked, the one system I could follow for the rest of my life. I don't have much of internal stop mechanism. Once I decided to do something, I go all the way. So I completely rebuilt my diet. I bought all the products I thought I needed. Avocado oil, flaxseed oil, almond oil, psyllium, ingredients for keto bread. I ordered large quantities of supplements from my herb. Electrolytes, magnesium, potassium, omega-3, other vitamins and minerals, and strictly recorded everything I ate. Every morning I tested my urine ketone levels. I drank electrolytes according to a schedule. I ate twice a day. I practiced intermittent fasting. Sometimes I went without food for over 2 days or even longer. I told myself that I was triggering autophagy because that was how it was explained in the video I watched. Keto became more than a way of eating. It became a separate project, almost a lifestyle. I studied information, watched videos, searched for recipes, baked special bread, made keto pizza, keto desserts, keto version of ordinary food. I was preparing to live like that for a very long time because I was convinced I had found the solution. And I genuinely felt changes. I felt as if I had more energy. It seemed as if my productivity had increased by about 30%. And that was extremely important to me because my main goal at that time wasn't health. My main goal was to work even more. I used keto as another way to avoid stopping. As long as I was working, I didn't have to feel how difficult the move, and my new life really were for me. At the same time, I had chronic urticaria, chronic hives. I was constantly taking antihistamines. I slept a lot, but barely connected any of those things. I was simply happy that I could continue working. I also experienced unpleasant physical side effects. Dehydration, muscle cramps, other symptoms, especially if I missed my supplements or electrolytes. But instead of asking, does this system actually suit me? I bought another bottle of supplements. I believed the problem wasn't the diet. The problem was that I was not following it correctly enough. I followed keto even while attending specialist podology training. in Moscow, and in Spain. Even there, I tried not to break the rules. I could go without food for a very long time, and I was proud of it. Proud of my discipline, my willpower, proud that other people might not be able to do it. But I could. But gradually, I developed a strong aversion to certain foods. I could no longer look at bacon, salmon, asparagus, or some of these meals I had repeated again and again. Over that year, I lost around 11 kilograms, from 80 to 69. Sometimes I wondered, wasn't there quite a small result for such an enormous amount of control? But then I immediately reassured myself. Slow weight loss is the best kind of weight loss. The important thing was that the weight would never return, because now I understood everything, but I hadn't learned how to live with food. I had simply learned how to follow it and know the system extremely well. At the end of January 2022, exactly 1 year had passed. It was as if I ticked a box. Done. I had proved that I could do it, and I stopped keto. After that, my work became even more intense. I had no normal eating schedule. I could work all day and then eat late in the evening. We ate at restaurants. I used food to cope with stress. On top of that, 2022 was an emotionally difficult year. What happened on 24 February 2022 deeply affected many people across the post-Soviet region and directly affected people around me. Among my clients were people on both sides of what was happening. Everyone had their own opinion, their own pain, their own way of coping with it. I wasn't simply providing a service. I listened. I support people. I absorbed their emotions. And once again, food became the fastest way to find some relief. Within about a year, my weight climbed to almost 90 kilograms. And in February 2023, I finally admitted that I was experiencing burnout again. A very severe burnout. It took me a long time to recover from that burnout. About a year and a half later, I began feeling better. In September 2024, I decided to change my life again. I started a YouTube channel. I began exercising every day. I started counting calories very strictly. I weighed almost every gram of food, and once again, I lost weight. Around 11 kilograms. It took me 4 months, from 90 to 17.2 kilograms. From the outside, everything looks right. Exercise, calorie counting, weight loss. But inside, it was still the same old system. I was hungry, but I kept going. It was difficult, but I kept pushing myself. Once again, I was trying to prove that I could endure it. And gradually, I reached my third burnout. I am not saying that calories counting or exercise themselves cause burnout. No. The problem was how I was using them, as punishment, as control, as another way of ignoring myself. For 20 years, I rarely lost weight for myself. Not for my health, not for my sleep, not for my future. I lost weight to fit in, so that other people would think I was beautiful, so that they would not judge me, so that I could fit into a certain clothing size, so that I could earn exceptions. I hardly cared how I achieved the result, through hunger, through pain, through restriction, through endless exercise, through willpower. I always put myself last. Deep inside, I believe that I had to earn the right to be accepted, and food became a tool. Sometimes I comforted myself with food. Sometimes I compensated for restriction. Sometimes I almost used food to punish myself. And then I punish myself again for eating. Every time I started a diet, I felt proud of myself. I felt motivated. I thought, now I'm strong. Now everything will change. For some people, motivation might disappear after a week. Mine could last for months, even for an entire year. But all motivation eventually runs out. And then you are left with ordinary life. A life in which you are miserable. A life in which you eat food you don't want to eat. A life in which you constantly control yourself. A life in which you wait for a reward for all your suffering. Yes, the weight came off. But I could not eat that way for the rest of my life. I could not eat the same porridge forever. I could not keep returning to a 13 days diet every few months. I could not spend my entire life measuring ketones, going without food for 2 days, exercising every day when I did not want to. And when I could not no longer endure it, I returned to food, often with an even stronger desire for everything I had denied myself for so long. As if my body remembered the restriction it had experienced and was now trying to compensate for it. Today I understand almost every diet I tried worked, but only in one very narrow sense. It made the number on the scale smaller. It did not teach me how to eat. It did not teach me how to understand hunger. It did not teach me how to care for myself. It did not teach me how to deal with stress. It did not change my life. It simply gave me another short period of control. And then the control ended. And after everything returned, the diet worked for exactly as long as I could endure it. But enduring is not the same as living. My trauma created an enormous amount of willpower in me. That strength helped me survive many difficult things. But for a long time, I used it against myself. I believed that the harder I push myself, the faster I would change. But instead, I kept breaking down again and again. In my next video, I will talk about the night when instead of starting another diet, I began a completely different kind of conversation. A conversation with AI. I will explain how I track my food now, and why even calories counting feels completely different to me today. Because this time I didn't begin with restriction. I began with a question. What does my body actually need? Thank you so much for being here. If any part of my story resonated with you, please tell me in the comments which diet you have tried and what happened after the diet ended. I would really love to read your stories. I will see you in the next video. And as we say here in the Netherlands, tot de volgende keer. Tot ziens. Bye!